Hello everyone, welcome to sqadia.com. We are talking about the pituitary, pineal and the adrenal glands, and at this point in time we'll talk about the pituitary gland. This is the first section of this presentation. For further sections, keep watching sqadia.com. So in this section, we'll talk about the overview of the pituitary gland, that is how the development of the pituitary gland begins, what are the sources of its development. We'll see what are the sources of development of other glands included in this topic as well. Then we'll see the subdivisions of the pituitary gland. These are the developmental subdivisions, that is how the various sources contribute to various parts of the pituitary glands. Then we'll see the various parts of the pituitary gland as separate. We'll talk about adenohypophysis in this section and the other part, the neurohypophysis, in the next section. So let's get into it. So first of all, developmentally, the pituitary gland, also known as hypophysis cerebri, develops from the ectodermal lining, ectoderm which lines the roof of the stomodium, and the neuroectoderm of the hypothalamus. So there are two developmental sources: the ectoderm, which lines the roof of the stomodium, and the neuroectoderm of the hypothalamus. Now the pineal gland develops from diverticulum from the roof of the third ventricle. So it has a single source. It develops from a diverticulum that develops from the roof, from the roof of the third ventricle. And finally, let's talk about adrenal gland. The adrenal gland also has two different sources. It develops from coelomic epithelium and the neural crest cells. So while talking about these three glands, two of them have two different sources of development, these being the pituitary and the adrenal glands. However, the pineal gland has a single source of development. So the pituitary gland, it develops from the ectoderm as well as the neuroectoderm. The ectoderm which lines the stomodium, and the neuroectoderm of the hypothalamus. In case of adrenal gland, it arises from the coelomic epithelium as well as the neural crest tissue. However, in case of pineal gland, it develops from a diverticulum that comes off from the roof of the third ventricle. So moving on, these are the different developmental parts of the pituitary gland, which is also known as the hypophysis cerebri. So pituitary gland actually composed of two parts. Here you can see in blue is the adenohypophysis, and this is in yellow is the neurohypophysis. The adenohypophysis is further divided into three parts. This is the pars anterior or the anterior lobe. This slight dark blue region is known as pars intermedia, and this the cord-like, stalk-like structure is known as pars tuberalis. These three parts are the parts of adenohypophysis. Now let's talk about the neurohypophysis. The neurohypophysis also has two parts. This is known as the pars anterior of the neurohypophysis, which is actually the posterior lobe of the gland in itself, and this is stalk-like structure is known as the infundibulum. So these are the developmental parts of the pituitary gland. So the pituitary gland consists of two different parts: the adenohypophysis in blue, which is the anterior region of the pituitary, and the neurohypophysis in yellow, which is the posterior region of the pituitary. I've already explained both the regions separately. So this is a diagram which clearly shows the subdivisions of the pituitary. This is the anterior lobe, again the pars intermedius. This is the posterior lobe in infundibulum, which is a part of the posterior lobe. This is the part of the anterior lobe. So the pituitary gland or hypophysis cerebri, it has an adenohypophysis which has pars anterior. Here you can see this is the anterior lobe, also known as the anterior lobe of the pituitary gland. Then it has a pars intermedia, which is a separation between the anterior and the posterior lobe, and then there is pars tuberalis in this region. This is the pars tuberalis. Then we have a neurohypophysis. The posterior part of the pituitary gland consists of the pars nervosa, which is the posterior lobe of the pituitary gland. Here you can see this is the posterior lobe of the pituitary gland, and finally we have the infundibulum or the stalk. These are the developmental parts of the pituitary gland. So let's see now how the pituitary gland develops in itself. So it develops from an evagination of ectoderm which lines the roof of primitive oral cavity. We talked about it before. The adenohypophysis develops from two sources, one of them being the ectoderm of the stomodium, the ectoderm which lines the roof of the stomodium, the other being the neuroectoderm of the hypothalamus. So we're talking about the ectoderm which lines the stomodium. Now, the adenohypophysis actually develops from an evagination from this ectodermal lining. This evagination is known as the Ratkes pouch. So what is Ratkes pouch? It develops in the third week of intrauterine life. It is cut off from the primitive mouth or the stomodium. So this is the ectoderm. Here you can see in blue, which is lining the primitive oral cavity. And this is the evagination that develops during the third week of intrauterine life. This evagination is known as the Ratkes pouch and is the source of development of the adenohypophysis. This Ratkes pouch, further in development, this Ratkes pouch is completely cut off from the developing stomodium. So the anterior wall proliferates extensively to form the pars anterior of the hypophysis cerebri. So the anterior wall of the Ratkes pouch, it undergoes rapid proliferation. It forms the pars anterior or the anterior lobe of the pituitary gland or the hypophysis cerebri. The posterior wall remains thin and it forms a pars intermedia. So the posterior wall, it remains thin and it forms the pars intermedia, that is the separation between the anterior and the posterior lobes. Now the cleft persists as the hypophyseal cleft and it separates the two parts. So this cleft can be seen in the adult pituitary gland as well. Now moving on, we have small extensions of pars anterior that grow upward along the infundibular stalk and surround it to form the pars tuberalis. So the upper portion of the pars anterior, it goes upward and forms small diverticulums of small outgrowths towards the infundibulum or the stalk, and these outgrowths tend to surround this infundibulum and are known as pars tuberalis. So this is how the three parts of the anterior part of the pituitary, that is adenohypophyses, are formed. Here you can see in the figure. So recapping it, first of all, there's outpouching from the developing ectoderm. This outpouching is known as Ratkes pouch. The Ratkes pouch develops in third week of intrauterine life. It is the source of origin of the adenohypophysis, that is the anterior pituitary. Now, the anterior wall of this Ratkes pouch, it undergoes a rapid proliferation, as a result of which it forms the pars anterior of the hypophysis cerebri. The posterior wall, it does not undergo rapid proliferation and it remains thin to form pars intermedia. The cleft between them, it persists as the hypophyseal cleft and can be seen in the adult pituitary. Now, the small extensions of the pars anterior that go to grow around the infundibulum or the stalk and surround this infundibulum. These outgrowths are known. These outgrowths are collectively termed as pars tuberalis. This Ratkes pouch is finally cut off from the developing stomodium. Here you can see in the figure. So this was all about the development of the adenohypophysis. We saw what were the sources of development of the adenohypophysis and we recapped it on the previous slide. I hope you understood it. For further such sections, keep watching sqadia.com.